The three top things that I always tell my mentees to always keep in mind is be proud of who you are, be proud of your culture, no te rindas, that whatever they set their mind to, they're able to reach.
Welcome to Latinx Can, a podcast showcasing Latinx professionals who turn their dreams into realities. I'm your host, La Doctora Jenire Flores Delgado, and today I'm here with Dr. Teresa Ramirez, a first-generation Mexican-American scientist who is committed to give back to her community. And she's here to tell you, sí se puede, my friends, sí se puede. Dr. Teresa Ramirez, welcome to Latinx Can.
Thank you so much, Annie, for this such great opportunity.
Oh, I'm so excited. Why don't we start by talking about where does your story begin?
Thank you, Jenny. Well, my story begins in the city of Compton, California. I was raised in Compton, but I was born in Torrance, California. I come from immigrant parents who immigrated from Zacatecas, Mexico to Southern California. And I had the pleasure of being born in the States. My parents had to work at a very young age, so they couldn't obtain an education. But for me, being a child, first generation, the first person to be born here in the States, I had that opportunity to get an education. And even though I was raised in the city of Compton, California, I was able to attend Compton Public Schools. There were limited resources, but I always loved school. You can ask my mom. She would say, Mija, you were always with your backpack and books at like a very young age, like 3. And they would ask you, like, where are you going? Oh, I'm going to school.
So, you know, we hear a lot of things about Compton, and most of the time they're not positive things. They're very negative things. It's all about the poverty and the violence. But you're very proud to be from Compton. So what was it like growing up in that place?
Well, unfortunately, the media is always going to portray the bad things from a city, right? And so Compton is known for its gang violence, drug dealing, shootings, whatever you can think about or figure out, it's always portrayed in Compton. But actually, Compton is like any other cities. It has good things, bad things. It depends on the person. If you want to find trouble, you'll find trouble anywhere you go. Mm-hmm. Being able to live in the city, unfortunately, some situations like drive-by shootings became part of our lives. Mm-hmm. But better yet, there was great things like a community that supported each other. Our vecinos, vecinas, we were there as a family. And so that is what created that community. Even people who used to live in Compton and actually left, they're so proud. I don't know. I cannot explain. It's just a proud feeling that we're from this community. Mm-hmm. I grew up with Latinos of different Latino cultures, African Americans, and Pacific Islanders, Samoans. Mm-hmm. And so growing up with these different communities just created something very special from where we came from. But in reality, I don't really have an answer. It's just, I can't explain. Like we all like rap music. Yeah. I didn't like rap music because I would hear it all the time. But now when I hear the old rap music, I'm like bumping it up and it brings me back home.
I was just thinking about this. When I lived in Swaziland in Southern Africa, we would go to Johannesburg. And at the time, Johannesburg was the most dangerous city in the world. And I never lived in Caracas, but Caracas in Venezuela was the 3rd most dangerous city in the world. So I remember people always saying, just be really careful. Johannesburg is not a place for a young woman to be walking around. But when I like stepped into the streets, I just felt something very familiar. I mean, there was a lot of chaos. I'm sure there was a lot of violence, but I also had this sort of skill that I had developed from having lived in a place that was also dangerous, that I didn't feel that I was safe, but I also didn't feel that I was unsafe. I felt that I could take care of myself by just being aware of the situation.
Right. You're able to adapt. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what happened. Like growing up in Compton, yes, there was, like I said, drive-by shootings, but I feel that our community, like where I grew up, we would take care of each other. I didn't know how to drive until I was like 19. So my dad would work in the evening. So I would be with my mom. We would do a lot of walking, especially because I was involved so much in the community, in our church, and she doesn't know how to drive. So nothing ever happened to us. And sometimes we would be walking at like 11 p.m. and everything was fine. And so when I look back, I'm like, wow, like we were walking, but we were walking in our streets. And then I would say that those who were part of gangs actually knew, they had respect towards their neighbors. Even we had some neighbors that were a little troublesome sometimes, not with us, but like, you know, they would be involved in like not ideal things like robberies. But with us, they would always take care of us. And you know, and it's that feeling, even though regardless of what they did, it was a community.
And I also guess that, you know, that was your day-to-day life. You didn't know anything different. So that was what was normal.
That was normal to us, hearing the English, the Spanish music, people playing their loud music. Like, you know, that just was our community. And then what I also have really fond memories is having las tienditas, those Mexican Latino stores, or like having el paletero selling paletas, or the ice cream truck. Like those are memories of my childhood.
Yeah.
And like working outside in our yard, like cutting the lawn, I would have people pass by and be like, hey, Teresa, what's up? But, you know, I was busy working with my family in the yard, but yet involved in just being part of a community. So I miss it. To look back, I'm like, you know, I really enjoyed my childhood.
You were always really keen on studying, and your parents were also a significant influence. Tell us a little bit more about how you found ways to continue your education, especially, you know, going through high school and eventually thinking about going to college.
Well, I was always a very curious kid. And growing up, if I wasn't part of the catechism for my Sunday school, growing up, I was actually involved in like after school programs. And so my parents enrolled me in a visual performing arts program, which was after school. So that's where I learned how to play an instrument. I learned how to like sing gospel music, like any type of English music. I learned a little bit of acting through my drama class and even painting. And so they always found ways to keep me engaged. So that's what I remember growing up. Like I was always involved in something. I didn't know that I was interested in the sciences, but for me, I was like, I want to become a doctor.
But somewhere in your path, you changed courses and you obtained a bachelor's in general biology from California State University, Dominguez Hills. What made you change your mind, and how was the process of going through college as a first-generation college student?
Well, actually, before going to college, when I was in high school, I still had in mind that I was going to become a pediatrician, a medical doctor, because I loved babies. But better yet, I wanted to help my community. I wanted to help babies, but never really thinking that babies get sick. Sometimes babies can be premature, that babies can suffer from different diseases. You know, you're kind of naive when you're growing up because you think like, oh yeah, I can, you know, treat a baby who has flu, or like not something very serious. But when I was in high school, I participated in a program that was sponsored through the UCLA Medical School. And that gave us an opportunity to come and visit the medical school, see cadavers. And I was like, oh, I can do this. I could see a cadaver. I could see blood. No problem. But when I was in college, I had the opportunity to come and help one of my neighbors. And she was pregnant at the time when she had her baby. She needed a translator. And she had asked me like, hey, can you come and help me? Because my baby's premature. She was born with Down syndrome. And I just don't understand what the doctors are saying. And we're going to tell them that you're my cousin. So that way you can come in and don't have any trouble by, just being there with me. I actually had the opportunity to come and like be there as her translator, but also I was also able to go to the
the NICU?
NICU, where like babies and premature babies are. And it was just really devastating because I was able to see babies that were the size of my hand or even smaller.
Oh, wow.
Incubated. And so when I saw that, it broke my heart. And I said, you know what? I don't think I have the heart for this. I mean, I have the heart to help, but it would be too emotional for me.
Yeah.
I don't think I would be able to do this. So it kind of made me doubt what I wanted to do. But like I said, the universe has other plans for you. In the time that I was an undergrad student at California State University, Dominguez Hills in Carson, California, I had a mentor. And thanks to my experiences in high school, when I participated in my first summer research program at the Charles Drew University through the Drew University Research Partnership Program, that's where I got introduced to the program at Cal State Dominguez Hills. It was called the Minority Biomedical Research Support Program. Yes, for many that knows that program existed back in the days in the 1999 years.
Yeah.
So I became part of that program in my sophomore year as an undergrad. And thanks to that exposure, I learned to become more involved in the biomedical research lab. I also became involved in in organizations like SACNA, Society for the Advancement of Mexicanos and Hispanics and Native Americans in Science, and just seeing people that looked like me that were scientists and started getting more involved, more in the scientific aspect. But in my mind, I was like, maybe MD, PhD, that I can see patients, but also work in the research lab. But then, you meet different people. There's people who are there to encourage you. There's also people who are there to discourage you. And I actually had a cousin, a faraway cousin, that he was going to medical school. And he told me, Tere, med school, it's very difficult. And if you're not feeling like that's the route you want to do, think about it. There's other types of careers that you can use the science. So when he kind of told me that, I was like, maybe he's right.
Yeah.
But what really set the green light of like, no, you need to change this was when I did my post-bac program. After I graduated from Cal State Dominguez Hills, I felt like I wasn't ready to go to medical school. I wasn't 100% sure. I needed some time off. And what did I do? I took some time off by only applying to one program, which I don't really advise students.
Yeah.
But I did it. I learned it through one of the SACMAS conferences. And so I applied to the one post-bac program through the National Cancer Institute. And I was very lucky because I got accepted.
Yeah.
That program, being involved with like top-notch scientists in cancer research. At the time, I was doing breast cancer and colon cancer research.
Yeah.
I really thought, you know what? I really love the research aspect, being in the laboratory. But better yet, something that I learned was that if you get a PhD in the sciences, regardless if you come from an underserved community, everything's paid for. And I thought, you know what?
Yeah.
I graduated from an undergrad with full ride scholarships.
Yeah.
Financial aid. I don't owe any money.
Yeah.
And my parents didn't have to like sell their house because they were like, Mija, we could sell the house to help you pay the tuition. They didn't have to do that.
Right.
Oh, if I get a PhD, everything paid for? Well, yeah. And I love what I'm doing. Sure. That's what I want to do. So that was the wake up call that kind of allowed me to think outside of the box.
Yeah. Nothing like having to pay for medical school to push you into thinking about other options, right?
Exactly. and having mentors who actually were there to inform you and like say, yes, si se puede, you can do this.
Yeah.
A letter recommendation, not just a letter recommendation, a strong letter of recommendation.
Yeah. So Tere, let's take a step back, and you mentioned a postbac. I was not familiar with postbacs until maybe a couple of months ago when we interviewed Dr. Alfredo Angel Esposa, and he also did a postbac before they were postbacs. So tell us a little bit about what a postbac is. And for you, that was the first time that you left California, right?
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about that experience as well.
So when I finished my undergrad back in May of 2004, like I mentioned, I didn't think I was ready to go to medical school. I knew I wanted to get a higher education. I knew I wanted to become a doctor one day because I would be the first one in my family, right? And I would say, like, not only would I make my parents proud, but I can come back to my community and really make a difference.
Yeah.
And so I learned through the SACNAS conference, especially when students have the opportunity to present their research at a national conference. They also get the opportunity to network. They get the opportunity to visit the exhibit hall where there's different institutions, different programs, or even the National Institutes of Health is there. So when I was just strolling around the exhibit hall, gaining information, I actually came across this program for a postbac. And I just told myself, I said, this will be ideal because I'm not ready to go to medical school. I need some time to really think and get more experience so that my application becomes stronger. And I think I need to take some time off, but yet still involved in research and in education. Mm-hmm. And so I applied to the National Cancer Institute, and I knew that was kind of far. But prior to this program, what really helped me to move out of California was doing a summer research program in England when I was a sophomore.
Wow. Mm-hmm.
So when I did that for 2 months and a half, I said, I can go anywhere. Mm. Family to me is very important. Being an only child, being Latina from a very close family, I, never really thought that I would leave home. I thought I would always be in California, close to my parents, close to my immediate family. And when these opportunities came, I really think that as I mentioned before, the universe was really preparing me for the next steps of my career, of my life. Mm-hmm. And even my undergrad research advisor, Dr. Laura Robles, would always tell me, she's like, you need to spread your wings and just go outside of California for a summer research program. Why is she telling me this? I want to stay in California. But now that I look back, I'm like, man, she was so right. Because I've explored places that I never imagined. And thanks to that postbac program, that was my first time leaving California to live somewhere else, where I lived here in Maryland for 2 years. I didn't know what it meant to feel cold during winter. I also experienced the different seasons that changed, like the colors of the trees from the fall to spring to summer. It was just a beautiful experience. But yet I didn't know that I was going to come back to Maryland years later. Because of that experience, when I was applying for grad school, that I knew for sure, okay, I'm not going to go to medical school. I am going to apply for graduate school. I considered the East Coast. I didn't actually cut my opportunities to apply. I didn't cut them short. I said, no, I am going to apply. I applied to California, to all schools in California, and then outside, UT San Antonio, mm-hmm. Purdue. I applied to Brown. Those were the only 3 schools that I applied outside. Well, guess what? All the schools in California denied me except for Stanford. They placed me on the waiting list.
Wow.
And schools that I applied outside of California, they all accepted me. So it's kind of like the universe was trying to, you need to leave California because you are going to go to grad school somewhere else.
Yeah.
Which I did. And I'm happy I did because I became a more independent woman, a more open to new opportunities and with new experiences that I can always come back home to my sweet California to continue making a difference, not only just in California, but wherever I go.
Absolutely, yeah. And it's that ability to go to places and adapt to new environments that is so important to have, right? Because that means that if you succeed in one place, you develop some skills and then you go somewhere else and you can use those skills that you developed in the previous one. It just makes you it expands the opportunities that you can have access to just being able to adapt.
Exactly. You're totally right about that. Adapting, creating new support systems, because anywhere that you go, it is important to really have a support network, a support.
Yeah.
It's not about the quantity, but the quality of people who surround you.
Yeah. That's so right. And I was watching In the Heights, the movie this weekend.
I just saw it too. Yes.
Yeah, it was actually so good. I loved it. I can think of the story of Nina, right? And how she had gone to Stanford from the Heights.
Oh, it's giving me chills.
And she felt like she didn't fit in, right? And I was like, I can understand the feeling. And that was one of the reasons why she wanted to move back to the Heights, right? Because she missed her community. But in my mind, I'm like, girl, you make your own support system. Your community is out there, but you make your own. You find the people that are like you, who look like you. And we may be few, but we are there. And people who can support you are always there. You just have to build that for you.
And it's interesting because sometimes, unfortunately, we undergo what's called the imposter syndrome, that we are like, oh, I don't belong here. Like, oh my gosh, what am I doing here? You start asking yourself so many questions, but we really truly have to remind ourselves, why are you here? You are supposed to be here. Yeah. And what kept me going was really thinking back of how my parents immigrated to this country, how hard that had to work. And I said, you know what? I'm going to be someone in life, because one day I'm going to buy them their house. I'm going to be the one that's going to take care of them, but I make sure that I achieve that. And so you're right. Wherever you go, you create that support system. Yeah, sometimes it is people that look like you, but you know what? There's always sometimes that there's people who are from different cultures, your support system. And I had that when I was in grad school.
Yeah.
I still remember one particular person, Carrie, was like a mom. She would always cook for like grad students and buy over for like Thanksgiving. And she was just so awesome. She is Caucasian. And for me, Carrie is like one of my good friends, but also like someone that I consider as family. While I was in grad school, and to this moment, we still stay in touch.
Right. So you went to grad school then to pursue a PhD in molecular pharmacology and physiology from Brown University. We talked a little bit about how you didn't have much of a choice to stay in California because all the grad schools that accepted you were outside of the state. But how did you decide to go to Brown? And what was the experience like for a first-generation college student, first-generation graduate student now studying at one of the Ivy League schools?
I know, right? When I think about it, I'm like, me? I went to Brown? What? Straight out of Compton to an Ivy League school?
Damn!
At the time, I had no idea that Brown existed. I had no idea that Brown was an Ivy League school. But thanks to that summer internship program that I did at Brown through the Leadership Alliance program, introduced me to Brown University. So that's why when I was applying for grad schools, it was limited to the schools that I applied, because UTSA, I said, oh, I already have mentors there from SACNAS who are professors. So good hands. And then Purdue, the same thing. I had met professors and staff members who would attend the SACNAS conference. And I would always have that like relationship with them when I would see them, like, hi, how are you? Like I would stay in touch. So I applied to schools that I knew that I would have a support system. And then for Brown, because I had previously done a summer internship program, the Leadership Alliance office was there. So I was like, oh, I'm good. I have the leadership. So those were the reasons why I applied to those schools. But the only difference when I was accepted to Stanford, I didn't really know many people from Stanford, but I thought, oh, this is great because it's a great school and it's in California.
Right.
In my mind, I was like, yes, Stanford, that's where I want to go. But to be honest, when you go to interviews, you get that feeling of where it tells you that you belong there and that you feel welcome. All the schools outside were welcoming, but there was a very special feeling when I went to Brown. Like my heart was the one that told me, yep, this is your school. This is go. But my brain was like, nope, you're going to go to California. You're going to go to Stanford. So I was in a big dilemma because I really wanted to go to Stanford to be closer to family. But yet my heart was like, no, Brown. So Brown accepted me right away. Stanford placed me on the waiting list. Mm-hmm. Not only that, Brown invited me for a second interview, like to come and see. It's not like an interview, but it's more like come visit our school because they wanted me. So I said, you know what? I am going to go to the school that really wants me. Mm-hmm. If Stanford doesn't decide, I am going to choose Brown. So I did. I'm glad I did because even days later, Stanford was like, oh, are you still interested? I said, nope, you waited too long. I already made my decision.
You're like, so nobody puts baby in a corner.
No. I was like, I am going to Brown, and I'm glad I did. I had a really fantastic time at Brown. And also, like, regardless of where students go, sometimes you face situations that can be discouraging or that can be detrimental to your final decision of where you want to accomplish. And I had a little bumps, but you know what? These bumps made this woman right here, Dr. Teresa Ramirez, stronger. Nothing or no one is going to stop me. And that's why I continue to mentor students. I need to share my story, my journey, because if I could do it, anybody can do it.
Can you tell us any examples of some of those bumps in the road that you experienced while you were at Brown?
Oh my gosh. Okay, I'll share two. So one of them was when I had to start over in my third year. I was in a research lab where I was told that there wasn't enough funding and that one of the professors, she was actually moving to a new school. So it was like a big disaster. I thought that funding was covered because, everything was paid for, but I didn't know that each lab had to get their own grants. So I learned that. And what did I do? Well, fortunately, my department at the time, the department that I was part of encouraged all the students to apply for fellowships. I applied to the graduate research fellowship through the National Science Foundation. And then as the go-getter that I am, I said, you know what? There must be other fellowships. So I go online looking, and I came across the Ford Foundation fellowship. And so when I applied to the other, I said, let me tweak some things and really focus on the Ford Fellowship. Yeah. I'm not going to tell my department that I'm doing this. I'm just going to submit. I submitted. I got my letters of recommendation. I had my proposal ready. I submitted. I am so grateful that I did that. Why? Because when all this dilemma of switching labs, it really helped me because I wasn't awarded the NSF fellowship, was awarded the Ford Fellowship, which saved my life. That's what really kept me going and staying in grad school. Okay, the second thing that happened was when a female professor had the nerve to tell me that I didn't have the qualities that were needed to be in a PhD program, but better yet, that I was one of the most nicest students in the department and that I didn't really have to get a doctorate degree, that I could just graduate with a master's and make a big difference in my Latino community. To me, I feel like it was very belittling me, very hurtful, and maybe she didn't see it that way. She thought she was doing me a favor, but she wasn't. And so my parents always taught me that you don't talk back to like your elders. I was like in shock. I didn't really know what to say. Yeah. I think because of respect, I said, oh, thank you. And I left. I was in shock. So I was like, who do I call? This is something very delicate. Are they going to kick me out of the program? Oh my gosh, like if I say something, they're not going to believe me. They're going to believe her. And so I felt like I didn't really have a voice. I called my mom, and when I spoke to her, she said, Mija, si te caes, te levantas. If you fall, you just get up. I told you, I warn you that unfortunately in life, we sometimes might face these type of situations, but you be strong and you have to remember why you're there. And so hearing those words of my mother, I said, you know what? She is right. I went and asked for help from my network. And I said, listen, this is very private. This is very delicate. I need your help. We need to meet. I met with 2 administrative individuals that worked at the time at Brown, and they listened and they gave me the support that I felt I needed at the time. And so they said, no, we're here to help you. We're not going to allow anything to happen to you, and we're here to support you. That I felt like I was, in good hands, and I was. And I said one day, I told myself, it took me some time to kind of like forgive her. I felt angry. I felt hurt. And I just felt like, I don't know, like she stepped all over me. But then I said, you know what? I am going to rise, because through my actions, you're going to see my success. And to this day, she has. Now I am part of Brown's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Advisory Committee. So yeah, I'm still part of Brown. And one last thing, I established the SACNA's Brown chapter, and it's still there and it's still active.
Yeah, I feel identified in your story, especially in the part where, we are raised to be respectful and humble, and you don't talk back to authority or to elders, right? But sitting in that situation and having this type of feedback that is definitely hurting you, and just having to sit there and say, thank you for your feedback. Just containing yourself from talking back is one of the most difficult situations. I've been in that situation with a manager. Unfortunately, my first manager, who just couldn't handle who I was. She couldn't handle my personality. And I only realized that months later that it wasn't me. It was her problem. But I had to sit in her office and just smile and say, thank you for the feedback you're giving me, even though it's hurtful feedback and not helpful. But I think one of the things that I can see from your story is that it's like, okay, it takes us a little bit to sort of process that information, but never stop fighting for yourself, right? I did the same thing. It's like, okay, you're hurting me, but I'm not going to let you win without a fight. I might not be here in 10 years or whatever, or even in 6 months, but I'm not going to be allowing you to step all over me without fighting back. And it's one of those things, like you said, we are in these spaces for a reason. We've worked hard and we deserve to be there. So nobody has the right to step on us.
Exactly. And always with respect and professionalism, you win the case, and I never talked back for a long time. Not even my closest friends knew what was happening, because I just didn't want to create a bias around, or like a negative environment around us. And so for a long time, I was very anxious. And so until when I had to switch new labs, I actually was put in a lab where I was not really interested. This PI, principal investigator, had a really bad reputation of being really strict and harsh to her students. So when I was put in touch with her, and they said, well, this might be your rescue to a new lab, I thought, God is not going to put me in a worse situation. If this is what it is, well, bring it on. So I was like, my Compton is coming out. Like,
So, Tere, I've heard you now say SACNAS maybe about 5 times. SACNAS is the Society for Advancement of Chicanos, Hispanics, and Native Americans in Science. Yes. And it was definitely a pivotal influence in your career. Tell us a little bit about the organization, because I honestly didn't hear about SACNAS until I was maybe halfway through my PhD program. So tell us a little bit about the organization and maybe the kind of support that you got from them to help you advance in your career.
Is a nonprofit organization that was established, I forget the exact year, but maybe like 40 plus years ago. Where it happens to be that there was a few like Native American scientists, Chicanos. They were in an elevator and they were having a conversation where they said, what if we get stuck in this elevator? We're like the only Native American Chicano scientists. What's going to happen? We need to do something about this.
Oh, wow.
Create like an organization that can really focus on providing mentorship resources and just uplifting others that they can do the same, So that's how they created this. It started small, very small, but now it's such a huge organization. They have a national conference where students come from all over the states. They really value not just the sciences, but culture. It's una familia. So the mentorship you receive from different individuals from different universities, and that's why I mentioned that SACNAS was really important and very pivotal to my career. Why? Because being a first generation student from California, coming from a state school, not knowing really much about other opportunities outside until I became part of the MBRS program and then part of SACNAS, that's where I start learning and meeting people from different places. So now I have friends from all over the states. I have mentors also from different universities. And now I get to be that ambassador, that it's not just about receiving, because SACNAS was really good to me. I was able to receive travel awards to attend the national conferences. My abstracts were accepted, where I got the opportunity to present and become a better presenter. I was able to network because, believe it or not, I used to be shy. People don't believe it. People don't believe I was shy, but I was very shy because I wasn't really used to that. And so being able to attend these type of conferences kind of allowed me to come out of my comfort zone, be me, and I could wear my bright colors. I can wear, my nice jewelry, my Mexican jewelry. I don't have to hide. And if I have an accent, pues ni modo. But I'm proud of where I come from, but yet I am a scientist. And so SACNAS really played a huge, huge role in my career and my persona. I had previously been part of the SACNAS board as a post-bac program. I could say it now. I broke the rules because SACNAS had 2 positions for grad students. And in order to apply, you had to be in a graduate program. I wasn't. I was in a post-bac, but I had allies. I had advocates. And they're like, she's been a long time member. She can be a voice for the students. I loved it. I contributed. And then I became part of the SACNAS chapter committee for so many years. And then when I went to Brown, I said, my goal before I leave Brown, I'm going to start a chapter here. And I did. Yeah. And to this day, it's still active. In 2013, we were recognized as one of the outstanding newly established chapters. And so, I'm really excited because at least that legacy continues.
I suppose that SACNAS may be the equivalent of the Society of Hispanic Professional Engineers, SHEP. When I was in undergrad at UF, I only heard about SHEP, and that's mostly because I was surrounded by people who study chemical engineering, but I never knew about an organization that was for Hispanics in the sciences. And now that I think about it, that's probably the equivalent of an organization like that.
Yes, SHIP is a really good organization for engineers. It is kind of like SACNAS because they also have their national conference. Here in the DC, Maryland area, there's a big chapter. They're very engaged. But no, I would say that you need to step out of your comfort zone, look for outside opportunities, become involved of different organizations, because why? You never know who you're going to meet, what type of resources you're going to come across. And the community that you create.
Yeah.
This community that you create will be your longtime friends, your longtime mentors.
Yeah. And then they become the people that you interview in your podcast.
Yes.
So you said Sagnas was very influential in your life, and mostly not only because of the financial opportunities and assistance that you got, but also because of the mentorship. Now you are very, very active in providing mentorship to other students, to younger students. Tell us a little bit about why it is important for you to provide mentorships.
It's very important for me to provide mentorship for students. I mentor any type of student, regardless of their cultural background, economic background. But definitely, I really encourage those students who are first generation like myself, because I'm able to relate, but they also can relate to my story, which serves as a sense of like inspiration. I'm able to also share resources and sort of like just be like them and be like, you know what, look, I was in your shoes and I know you're probably struggling right now, but if I did it, you can do this too. So giving them that sort of push that they need, but also being that human, having that human touch.
Yeah.
You know, because sometimes there's individuals who kind of like compare you with others, but every person is unique. Every person has a very unique path, journey, that you don't compare yourself. You don't allow or let others compare you to other people. No, because you're different.
And so what are the different avenues through which you provide mentorship? I know that there are a few organizations where you maybe sit on the board or you're just an active mentor for that organization.
Well, I started mentoring at a very young age. I would mentor the kids from my community, helping them with their homework. Then I became a catechist in the Sunday school at my church, and making sure that the kids were ready to do their first communion. And then I worked in the daycare center that was around the corner where I lived with little kids. So I've always had that, but I never really knew that I was mentoring until now. I'm like, wow, I've been doing this for a long time. And when I graduated Compton Senior High School, since I was the first person to apply to college for my family and undergoing about the knowledge of applying for FAFSA, I took the initiative to come back and help the students with their college applications, with scholarships, and applying to college. And it really got well known that even parents were calling my parents. And so from there on, I started, and then my parents would join me sometimes, both of them, or maybe just my mom, and they would talk to the parents. Mm-hmm. Yeah, my daughter's a college student. This is what we've done into these opportunities. So it became a thing. And so now I continue to do that, even if it's virtually through a virtual call, I continue. And so one of my dreams and goals is to have like a scholarship fund, some type of program that I can create in the near future that helps students, especially first generation students like myself, apply for college, get a scholarship or something. Yeah. And if it wasn't for those people who really helped me in this journey, I wouldn't be where I am now.
I think it's so important, absolutely, especially because the financial barriers to get a higher level education are almost insurmountable if you don't have any help. So it's so important to have that access to the information at the very least, which is what we're trying to do here. So, Tere, now having mentored people throughout basically almost your whole life, what are maybe 3 top pieces of advice that you give your mentees that you think are very important and can apply to many different situations?
Well, the 3 top things that I always tell my mentees to always keep in mind is be proud of who you are, be proud of your culture, no te rindas, that whatever they set their mind to, they're able to reach. And I continue to do that because currently I'm part of the Latinas Leading Tomorrow nonprofit. organization where I'm leading a program called Latina Labs, in which we're instilling and empowering young Latina middle schools. And we actually also have some students who are non-Latinas who are participating as part of Latina Labs, into science, technology, engineering, and just to have fun with science.
Yeah.
Not to be scared or to fear that, oh, science is hard or it's boring. No, we want to make sure that they know that science is fun, that a Latina scientist like myself can be cute, fashionable, not just like a lab coat and like crazy hair. Like, no, like, like Einstein, because whenever they think of a scientist, they think of a male scientist. It's like, no, you could be a woman. You could be a different shape. You could be a different color. And this is a scientist. So I continue to do that because it's something that really is dear to my heart. But also I continue to bring change wherever I go.
The last thing that I wanted to touch on is that you mentioned that one fellowship that was life-changing literally for you was the Ford Fellowship. We've talked about the Ford Fellowship in the podcast before. We've had other Fordies here. So we have an idea of what the Ford Fellowship does for people. But now you have a special role inside that organization. Or maybe two special roles. The first one is that you are now part of the chair or co-chair for organizing the Ford Conference. And the other one is that you have been on the other side of the application process, helping to select the students that would be awarded with this prestigious fellowship. Tell us about what it means to now be able to have a say in the conference preparations, events and things like that. And maybe one piece of advice that you can give people who are interested in applying for the fellowship now that you have been on the other side.
So you touched many important things here. But before I answer this, I actually was invited before to participate as a speaker. And that's how I always became and stayed involved with the Ford Fellowship. But then I always wanted to do a lot more. And my good friend, Agustin Diaz, part of the planning committee, and I would always come to him and be like, hey, how can I be part of the planning committee? I want to get more involved. And he's like, you just have to ask. Submit it in your surveys. And so one of the key things I've learned is that when you want something or you want to learn about something, you must ask. Yeah. What's the worst thing that it can happen? That they say no, but at least you tried. So I asked. I was then invited to become part of the planning committee, which thankfully through that opportunity, I was selected to be one of the co-chairs for this year's virtual conference. So we're working towards also creating that community, even though it's going to be virtual. But I'm so blessed. I feel so fortunate and so happy that I'm this year's one of the co-chairs, alongside with the co-chair, Joseph Flipper, which we're working as a team and we're going to do our best to bring the 40s all together virtually. Secondly, it was a dream come true. Who would have thought that this Compton girl would be now on the other side reviewing these Ford fellowships, from pre-doctoral to dissertation to postdoctoral. When I look at that, I want to pinch myself. I'm like, wow, I am here at the National Academies of Science. What? Like me? And it's been my second year doing it, and it's been amazing. It's incredible to read all these fellowships. Wow, the things that our students are doing, it's amazing. But it's been really an amazing opportunity because now it's a group of reviewers. You're there, you're talking about the different applications. They receive tons. Then it's heartbreaking that you can only select just a few of them.
Yeah.
But no, I love it.
Yeah. Now I hear you talking about how an honor it is to be on the other side of that selection committee. And I think about this. I am not on the other side of a selection committee for something as big as Ford, for example. But I remember one instance where in the Women in Science and Engineering group at Texas A&M, there was a group of women that met to select awardees for a scholarship, and it was just $1,000. It was a huge amount of money, but $1,000 makes a difference for somebody that doesn't have anything, right? So I said, I would like to volunteer. They asked for people, and I was like, okay, I'll join. And I was the only Latina in that group. And the calling for that fellowship or for that scholarship specifically indicated that it was money to be used to sort of go through or help you get through a hardship. And it was not supposed to be used for research or anything like that, or for your academics. And I remember distinctly, and I didn't know really what this was about, but there was one essay of this lady who was applying in order to be able to get the money to apply for papers or for immigration papers that would allow her to just live a regular life, right? And nobody in that room, including myself, really understood what the hardship was. In reality, this was an undocumented student who was applying for DACA, but she did not have the money to apply to submit the application for DACA. And at the time, I didn't really quite understand what DACA was, but I read the essay first. And then on the second meeting, I before going to the second meeting, I asked my Mexican coworker in the lab, and I asked her, what is this? I don't understand. I think it's important because I know that any immigration paper is important. Me being an immigrant, I know that. And then she explained to me that it was a life-changing opportunity to get recognized in the country and to be able to apply for financial aid for simple things like a driver license that we all take for granted, but that's not the situation for a lot of people in this country. And so I understood then what it was. And then I went back to that second meeting, and everybody was saying, oh, this girl, she just wants to apply for some visa or some award or something like that. And I was like, no, she's actually applying for life-changing documentation that is going to improve her quality of life 100%, if not more. And so I was able to advocate for her in order to be awarded that scholarship and change her life.
And that's exactly true. As reviewers, sometimes there's people that don't see what you see. And so you're there sort of like a judge to be like, no, the student maybe, okay, let's give you an example. A student might not have the best grades, but they show progress in their education, that they're been able to succeed and that they're willing and they are really desperate of getting to their next step. Con ganas.
Yeah.
We have to be those advocates because you have different types of reviewers from like earlier to like more senior.
Mm-hmm.
Some people don't see it that way. Others do. And you have to keep in mind diversity. So having a fresher mind and I guess more younger, you can give different perspectives. And so being in the review panel has allowed me to speak up for some of those applications. And not only myself, others too. And not making assumptions, because sometimes people make assumptions, kind of like what you shared. There's assumptions that people make. No, you go for what is written, but you don't make those assumptions. You want to focus on what you're selecting the student or the trainee based on what they're providing you with those facts. And so I love it. I feel very fortunate that I have been given that opportunity and that I continue serving in whatever way I can, because always in life, it's not about just receiving, but also not forgetting where you come from and not forgetting to give back.
Absolutely. Tere, thank you so much for joining us in the podcast today.
No, it's been such a pleasure, Jenny. And thank you for opening this platform to have our voices heard, but also to serve as a way to inspire each other, because together it takes a village to make a difference. So muchas gracias.
Thank you for listening to this podcast. And if you want to put a face to the voices you just heard, you can follow us on Instagram at LatinxCan. If you have questions or feedback for us, you can email us at latinxcan@gmail.com. And if you like this episode, please leave a review. It is the quickest way to grow as a community. Once again, thank you for listening, and remember, unidos somos más.